But don't you? So you asked a really good question. Will next season be better or worse? And my answer, I think, is better because you're adding Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, and you've got an expanded playoff, so our games will matter more. But I don't think the answer is exclusively better, if that makes sense. Maybe a net positive, but things that are going on, I think, are ultimately the detriment to college football. I was thinking about this yesterday. So what drew me, and everybody's story is different, but what drew me to college football was small college football. I didn't grow up going to Ole Miss games or Mississippi State games in the SEC where they played Alabama every Saturday. I grew up going to see Furman and Georgia Southern play against each other. That was my big game. That's what I loved, and my dad and I would go to one big stadium a year. But there are millions of people that love college football. That's not LSU. That's not Ohio State. That's not Georgia. And what is so unique to me about college football is small towns, tiny towns all over the country. And you could throw Oxford and Starkville in there as well, because those are small towns. Get flooded with tens of thousands of people on a Saturday for a football game. And that happens in SEC stadiums, and that happens in Mountain West stadiums. Utah State draws well. It's not 100,000 people, but they've got people that care. And that's the beauty to me of college football, is how widespread it is. From big school to small school, there's millions of people that love it and care about it. And so today you've got Oregon State fans who just put $160 million into their stadium, had a great season last year, ended it by beating the brakes off of Florida in the Vegas Bowl, where they traveled to that thing like crazy. And now there's a chance that they are going to be in a conference of two because I guess nobody wants them. And I get capitalism. I am a capitalist, but Oregon State fans care about Oregon State football. They invest in it. They attend it. It matters. It matters to Corvallis. It matters to the university. It's a big part of the college experience. And tradition and regionality, if that's a word, and rivalries and upsets are the fabric of college football. Appalachian State, Michigan is what's so great about college football, because that doesn't happen in the NFL. There's no upsets like that in the NFL. So the more we trend towards creating like a super conference where there's only 38 teams that matter or whatever it is, the Oregon States of the world, and wait till the ACC disbands, Boston College, and Wake Forest, and Syracuse, all these people that are so invested in college football won't have a reason to anymore. And no, again, they're not LSU, they're not Ohio State, they're not competing for championships, but it matters so much to them, and you're taking it away from them. And I don't think that's great for the overall health of college football. I hate the nobody cares discourse. Your good friend and friend of the show, Matt Moscona. Nobody cares about the Mountain West. Mountain West fans do. Why should they just be cast aside to benefit LSU more? I know they're not important to us around here, but they're important to them. And you could just as easily say nobody cares about the Egg Bowl. Doesn't crack the top 15 most watched rivalry games. Nobody cares about the Egg Bowl nationally. Doesn't move the needle. Ole Miss, Kentucky last year was watched by more people than the Egg Bowl. But it matters right here. The Apple Cup's gone. Oregon State's gone. Bedlam's gone. All these things that make college football great, they're all gone. And yes, the television viewer benefits, but the people that actually go and invest and care, they're being given less reason to. And I don't like that.
Yeah. Hey, Dad, I've never thought of myself as like a college athletics elitist. You know, there's some that are like, all I want is the biggest brands. And yet at the same time, I've said frequently, I love Cinderella the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. Right. But I don't want to watch Butler in the Final Four. I mean, great story, Brad Stevens, all that good stuff. But I don't want to see Butler in the Final Four. I want to see Kansas or North Carolina or Duke or, you know, the Blue Bloods. I mean, would obviously love to see one of our teams from the state of Mississippi make it that far into the tournament. But if I'm just casually watching, St. Joe's in the Final Four does absolutely nothing for me.
Right.
And college football is kind of the same. I mean, I'll watch on a Thursday night or a Friday night or a Saturday night, and I like the games and I'm intrigued in the games, but I'm not counting the days to kickoff of Team Bork, you mentioned a second ago, Utah State, Fresno State. I'm not counting down the days to that.
Right.
But I am counting down the days to watch when Georgia goes to Knoxville this year. I will be counting down the days to watch when Oklahoma comes to Oxford or when Mississippi State goes to Austin. So, I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like for the fan, what do we say all the time? People don't care about fans anymore in college football. But I think the viewing experience just got better for fans. Like at a great big macro level, not necessarily at a micro level.
Well, first off, when you talk about you're looking forward to Ole Miss and Oklahoma and Mississippi State and Texas, that's because you're in Mississippi. People in Texas don't care about that game. People in Oklahoma, they'll the first trips to Starkville and Oxford will be fun for them, but after that, it's just gonna be like, I'm looking forward to playing Alabama, LSU, those games. And certainly people in Illinois and New York don't care about Mississippi State and Ole Miss. So you got to be careful, when you say things like that, because could be next. Don't think they're going to be next, but could be next. But the fact of the matter is this, if you're an Oregon State fan and your team has been basically relegated at this point, and I speaking as a fan of a sport who there is relegation, it's not like when Oregon State becomes impossible to find on television and they start playing games that don't really matter to anybody outside of Oregon State fans, that a bunch of Oregon State fans are just going to go, well, I'm an Oregon fan now. They're in the Big Ten. I want to be able to watch, so now I'm an Oregon fan. You're just going to lose them. They'll be like, I'll follow the Seahawks.
Yep.
All right, so hey, Dad, ultimately, will 2024 be better than 2023?
It'll be better because of the playoff. The 12-team playoff makes it better, but I don't know that all of this movement makes it better.
Yeah.
I mean, Oregon and Washington would be in the playoff discussion either way, right? If for the Big Ten or in the Pac-12, because they're good teams, they're good programs. Moving doesn't really, I don't think it helped their cause to get into the playoff, to be honest with you. Oregon had a much easier path not having to play Michigan and Ohio State, and certainly, next year wouldn't have had to play UCLA and USC. That's a case for Oregon to, go undefeated. So I don't know if they, the money's great, but you want to win games. That's the whole point of the sport.
I think Chase in Columbus makes a good point on the C Spire text line. He said it's a lot to talk about during the offseason because we're bored. But once it's rolling, it'll still be the same. Look how different 2020 was on paper. Schedule changes, mostly empty stadiums. Everyone had different scheduling models, but it was still college football. Upsets happened. The Heisman Trophy race occurred. In the end, there was a playoff and a champion. Who really brings up 10-win Alabama versus 6-win Ohio State for the title when they think back about the 2020 season? Hey, Dad, one of the points that you make on a regular basis is just get us to the games. Because once we get to the games, all the other stuff kind of goes away. And that's all we focus on for those 14 weeks of the regular season and for that 2-week stretch in the postseason when we crown a national champion. Maybe there's some wisdom to that. Maybe we're just entertaining ourselves in the offseason at the expense of a lot of people, but entertaining nonetheless.